Don't lip. All right. Okay, we're going to kick this off. Study session, the formal study session here. Mr. Bile, would you like to introduce the first topic, please?
So, thank you, Mayor. Council, the first item we have on the agenda is a discussion of opportunity zones. Opportunity zones are a great tool to be used for potential economic development, and we need some direction from Council tonight regarding potential opportunity zones to designate or to request the governor to designate, and Mr. Wise will be giving you a presentation about what these things are all about and then seeking your direction on a decision.
There we go, sorry. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Harry Weiss with Mura. I will be presenting this topic to you about opportunity zones. That doesn't work. Let's try this one.
When there's a Zoom up, you gotta click on it first and then it'll work. So let's try.
I'll just do it. Okay. So, opportunity zones. There are three areas of conversation that I want to have with you tonight. One is to provide you an overview of what opportunity zones are, how they function. The second has to do with the nomination process for opportunity zones, which is getting underway right now and is something that is fairly fast-tracked, so we need some direction from you pretty quickly on this. And then third has to look a little bit further into the future about the ongoing role of city and staff in particular in facilitating the Opportunity Zone program wherever we might have a designated area that has to do with resources of the city and staff involvement. So specifically, we're looking for your direction on which census tracts we should prioritize for the development of nominations that we would then submit to the state. Ultimately, it is the governor who selects the final census tracts for nomination to U.S. Treasury as opportunity zone designation. But it has to come from the local jurisdiction. We are the applicant for the nomination of the census tract. And then secondly, this question of the role of the city in future promotion and support of the OZ program. Now, this has not come before you in the past. Opportunity zones were originally created back in 2017. We have 3 opportunity zone designations in Medford, but those were handled back in 2018 by the regional development officers in conjunction with Business Oregon and in consultation with counties. The council had no formal role, although I believe there might have been some courtesy consultation information session that you all might have received back then. But this time around, council has a formal role in authorizing the nominations. Okay, so what are opportunity zones? This is a creature of the 2017 Tax Act, and it was conceived as a way to create a federal incentive to move capital out of different kinds of investments and get them into projects that were in distressed census tracts. And the way it was done was by creating incentives to move unrealized capital gains out of other investment vehicles and deploy that in these census tracts that had real estate and business expansion, business creation opportunities. And the way the incentive works is, one, if you liquidated an investment, let's just say it was stock, you had some appreciated stock, and you had unrealized capital gains. As long as you rolled it over into an opportunity zone, the first thing you got was a reduction in your basis for calculating the capital gains tax on the previous investment. You got a 10 to 15% reduction. You got a deferral on when you had to pay those taxes for up to 9 years. Most importantly, if you put that capital gain into this opportunity zone investment and held it for a minimum of 10 years, that investment would be tax-free thereafter. No capital gains due on its future sale or disposition. And you could carry that out to 2046. So you had a pretty long lead time of 30 years of appreciation in an investment that could be liquidated tax-free at the end of it. In order to, yes, go ahead.
Is that no tax on the entire capital gain of the property or on the initial investment?
The investment that you make into an opportunity fund project, the entire thing, all the appreciation is free of capital gains after 10 years. So
Let me give you a hypothetical, because that's what lawyers do. So let's say it would be a bigger number, but let's use 100,000. Let's say I have 100,000 with a basis of 10. I would automatically get 85 to 90 taken off of that, so it would be considered 85,000 or 90,000. I invested into $1 million property, or into a $100,000 property. It becomes $1 million in 10 years. I paid no tax on the 100 in my appreciation or the 900,000.
okay, let me restate that.
Please.
You have a $100,000 gain from a sale of stock.
Correct.
You put it into an investment in an opportunity zone. You will owe capital gains taxes on $85,000 of gain. You have
Okay.
9 years to pay it. If you leave all of that gain in the new investment, after 10 years, it will have no capital gains on that new investment.
On the 100,000.
Correct.
But if the investment appreciates, the property I buy appreciates, then that is what it is.
No, you don't pay capital gains on any of the appreciation of the new investment.
So the whole million is tax-free.
Yep.
Nice. Where's the
It's-
application?
Well, they're a little complicated.
I know.
Anyway, so opportunity zones were designed for distressed census tracts, and in each state, only 25% of the eligible tracts could be nominated or designated as opportunity zones. During this first round of 1.0, we'll distinguish 1.0 from 2.0, there were 86 census tracts that were designated as opportunity zones in the state of Oregon. Medford had 3. Census Tract 1, Census Tract 12, and Census Tract 13.01. 1, you may know, is downtown. It goes from basically up by the mall all the way down to Stewart Street, from the creek over basically to Oakdale, and it takes in the core of downtown. Census Tract 12, the image on the right, the dividing line between 12 and 13 is Vilas Road. So 12 is close to the airport, and 13 is mostly county or White City. There's only a very small portion of the city of Medford that is in Zone 13. Staff knows of only one Opportunity Zone project in Medford. And let me point out that Opportunity Zone 1.0 had really poor requirements for documentation, reporting, and accountability. To this day, I think the only people who possibly know what actually got invested is the IRS, because they're the only ones who actually ever saw the quality, the opportunity zone information. Business Oregon has no idea how many projects were actually done in the state. And the mapping of these census tracts don't tell us very much about what got invested. But we have one under our belt. This was the Genesis Apartments that Mura did in conjunction with Laz Ayala. When Laz and I first started talking about this site, and he had this idea that he wanted to do a rental project, I said, you're in an opportunity zone. You really ought to take a look at this, because you might be in a good position to roll gain from other investments into this if you're planning for at least a minimum 10-year hold. And he set that up. This was a project-specific fund. That is not typically the case with most opportunity zone projects that were done across the country. They tended to be large pools of money that then invested in multiple projects. But this is a single project, single fund. Okay, changes that are coming about with this new Opportunity Zone 2.0 version. So this is a creature of the One Big Beautiful Bill that was passed last summer. It made opportunity zones a permanent feature of the tax code. And the major points was it increased the accountability and reporting requirements, so we'll have better knowledge about how it actually plays out and got deployed. It narrowed the eligibility of census tracts, so we're going to have a reduction in the number of opportunity zones that can be designated in the state. It created some additional incentives if you did a project in a rural distressed census tract, because rural tracts didn't attract a lot of investment. They're harder for a whole infinite number of reasons, including lack of infrastructure and other kinds of complementary resources that can augment how opportunity zones work. So they've added some benefits if you're going to invest in rural. And then there's some minor tweaks on the deferral provisions and the exclusion provisions for the capital gains tax. As a new program or a restated program, we are now entering on a 10-year cycle of opportunity zones, which means there will be a designation starting in January 1 of 2027 that will run for 10 years, and then January 1 of 2037, there'll be a new cohort of opportunity zones that will go through a new nomination and designation process. Okay, the nomination process is fairly short track. Treasury released yesterday the final list of the eligible census tracts, and you can look there and see what the criteria are with minimum, median family income and poverty rate. There are 229 eligible census tracts in Oregon, which means there are a maximum of 58 that can be designated. That's down from 86 in the first round. So we're competing for more precious designations than the first time around. In this current cycle, it is the local jurisdiction that submits a separate nomination for each census tract that they wish to nominate. EDOs like Soretti can also provide this service, and they probably will in this case, not for Medford, but there is a census tract in Ashland that they're evaluating for a potential nomination. Once those nominations go in, and we think it's going to be due by the end of May, Business Oregon will review and score the nominations based on a rubric that they haven't actually released yet. So there's a little bit of flying blind. We're not quite sure how we're going to be scored, but the main things that they're looking for are alignment with other programs, economic development initiatives, other incentives, and readiness to try and deploy these in projects. And then finally, the whole list goes to the governor. The governor makes a final determination and submits that to U.S. Treasury by the end of September. So, as I said, yes.
Sorry, would one of the criteria be the performance on the previous 1.0 version? I know we don't have much data, but do other organizations, other cities have better data that might actually put us behind?
Well, I would certainly argue that we know more about opportunity zones than most communities do, because we've actually had a successful project that depended upon alignment with other resources in the community. You know, Laz's project, Mira put $1.2 million into that project and was able to leverage that investment. So it was kind of a perfect match of how you're supposed to align projects. So we'll be using that as an example of our own capacity to, help deploy these things. I imagine other communities that have had successful runs at OZ will do the same.
I guess I just would have thought there'd be more than one in many of these places, or no?
Not as many as you would think. There are some communities in the country that were very aggressive. Erie, Pennsylvania is one that did a really good job of attracting opportunity zone capital. But I was looking on a mapping tool yesterday. Of the 3 downtown census tracts in Portland, I could only find evidence of 4 projects. And again, the information is incomplete, so don't trust me on that number. Okay, so the nomination content really wants to see that you've got demonstrated alignment with your existing plans, your economic development initiatives, your infrastructure is ready, your incentives are there, you have potential project sites, hopefully you've identified potential developer interest, and you have statements of support from local powers that be that want to support the OZ process. So here's a short list of all the things that we can reference in a nomination as far as things that we already have developed in the pipeline. Okay, so as I said, the utilization of opportunity zone investments was variable across the country. Certainly, larger metro areas tended to have a greater degree of uptake of than smaller urban markets like Medford, and certainly the rural markets that really suffered. And real estate investment was a dominant focus of OZ 1.0. A lot of the mobilization of capital was concentrated in large funds that were handled by private capital market agents. They were not municipally led or government led, and typically involved multiple projects, went out and raised $500 million and then put it into housing in multiple markets. But the fund was the one that kind of concentrated all that firepower. So the genesis is a little bit of the other end of the spectrum in terms of project size. But the nomination of 2.0 tracks does want to take into consideration the breadth and depth of local resources and capacity that will help fuel OZ investment and uptake of the program. So the state is looking for some demonstration that we're going to be out there helping move this along. Okay, so there are 7 census tracts in Medford that were deemed eligible for OZ designation. 2.01, 2.02, 2.03, 501, 502, and Census Tract 8 are all eligible. Just to help put this in context, I took the proposed Mura 2.0 boundary, which is in the pale lavender color, and overlaid it on the census tracts, just to give you an idea of where the alignment of the eligible tracts also align with what we've been talking about in terms of Mura 2.0. Census Tract 1 is downtown, Liberty Park, South Downtown. It's got a lot of really good sites in it. Dairy Gold, Medford Fabrication. I had a conversation with Dan Thorndike end of last week about the redevelopment of that site, and he said absolutely they were interested potentially in using Opportunity Zone. They would look at that as a way to reposition that property for redevelopment in the coming 10 years. It includes Bear Creek Corridor, Creekside, Budge McHugh in downtown that we've been talking about for a number of years, as well as all that legacy industrial stuff that we identified along the railroad tracks. Census Tract 2.01 is on the west side of Census Tract 1, so it is the adjoining west boundary of the center city. It includes the West McAndrews Corridor, Jackson School, McLaughlin School, that neighborhood, as well as the city and county complexes that are just outside of Census Tract 1 on the west side of downtown. 2.02 is not, in my mind, a very high priority census tract. It's pretty well built out as a residential neighborhood. To relate it back to some of the things we talked about in 2.0 for Mura, we've talked about the Main Street and 8th Street corridors as a potential future transportation improvement to go back to two-way. That would be in this census tract, but there isn't a whole lot of other stuff that we've identified in past studies as far as big development opportunities in this census tract. Similar with Census Tract 2.03, that is immediately north of Stewart Avenue, basically from 99 over to, I think it's Columbus Street. Again, pretty well built out residential neighborhood, not a lot of commercial stuff in it. It does include Oakdale Middle School and Spiegelberg Stadium. I just mentioned that in passing because I know we've had conversations about the future of Spiegelberg, so you understand that it's in that zone. Census Tract 501 is an interesting tract because it contains Hawthorne Park. It contains the East Main Corridor, a major gateway into the city, and it includes much of the Bear Creek Corridor that we've described as a continuing area of interest for redevelopment, including Bear Creek Park down here at the south end. I identified some property right there where you enter into Dairy Queen and the old Motel 6 and all that. There's actually a lot of developable land in there that's publicly owned that could become an opportunity zone investment, potentially. And it's included in the proposed Mira 2.0 boundary. Census Tract 5.02 is north of Jackson Street. So it includes Medford Center, it includes Providence Hospital Complex, and all of the Biddle Road corridor. Again, not something that we've identified, certainly from the Mira standpoint, as kind of high-value areas for Mira 2.0, but nonetheless, development opportunities exist in that census tract as well. And finally, Census Tract 8 is this big tract out to the west that goes all the way to Jacksonville. In this image, you can see on the right-hand side, the stuff that's in that pale yellow, that's actually the portion that's in the city limit. So the vast majority of Census Tract 8, like Census Tract 13, is outside of the city. It does include a small portion of what we've described for Mira 2.0 out there at at Westgate, I believe is what we were calling it. Mr. Card, that was directed to you. At the intersection of Main and Lozier as another anchor area for future redevelopment. So tonight, the questions we are asking you is which census tracts out of these, and I know this is a very high-level preliminary view, do you think we should concentrate and prioritize? If we do multiple nominations, they do need to be prioritized as far as what your first, second, and third choice is. I don't think we'll get more than 2 at the end of the day, given the reduction in the number of tracts that are going to be eligible for designation. So I would strongly recommend Census Tract 1 as the #1 priority. And then my recommendation is either Census Tract 2.01 on the west side of downtown or 5.01 on the east side of Bear Creek for your consideration. And then the second question is a more general question about council concerns about how we participate and support the program going forward. Just to note that the direction you give tonight, we'll begin working on the nominations. Those will need to come back to you for approval as council. Probably, depending on how you tell us to move forward, we would bring those to you on consent agenda based on the direction that you give tonight. So, questions?
I would definitely like to prioritize the industrial lands areas that we've included, and it seemed like a lot of it was in Tract 1, yeah.
Yeah, Tract 1 includes all that stuff along the railroad tracks, what we described as legacy industrial. So everything from Naumus up on the north end, all the way to Treetop and Naumus on the south end, all of that would be in Census Tract 1.
So, Harry, do we, so the nominations are census tract by census tract? It's not like we want to do this footprint that's in area?
No,
across-
it's Census Tract.
So census tract by census tract, then I would agree with Tract 1 as being an obvious choice for nomination. Is there a reason why you're recommending only 2, or could we nominate all 3, or?
You can certainly nominate all 3. Again, I think given the reduction in the number of eligible tracts and how many, that the governor only has 58 to choose from as opposed to 86 the last time, I think we need to be really strategic about what's the highest priority. Census Tract 1, we can make nominations for 2 more, but you better be clear about which one you would prefer over the other.
Yeah, to me, I think 1 is a clear no-brainer. I'm just not sure whether additional nominations make sense, or which one, if we're only going to do 1 more. So that isn't quite clear to me, but definitely Census Tract 1 seems like a clear no-brainer. The overlap with Mira, the development that we've got going in there, like the alignment on all the different plans we have. When you were going through the criteria, to me, that's like Census Tract 1, check, check, check. So.
And I don't think it would be too hard. I don't think it would be a waste of staff time to actually prepare 3 and bring it to you at council meeting in May to say, go ahead with with the first 2 and drop the third one. If you need more information about what that second track would be if we only decide to do 2.
Nick, are you concerned that if we put more than 1 in there, it somehow waters it down, or what's your? At least that's maybe a takeaway I was taking from your question.
I think it's like that could be a possible concern. There's the concern about staff time if we're going to waste it on 3 and we only are going to get 1. I guess I don't, like, to me, it is clear that Census Tract 1 is a no-brainer. We've got to put in, we got to nominate that. I think this is one that we can get. Yay, I'm happy. I think it's worth all the effort and time. I just don't know enough about the politics of this process, about the workload, about the nature of the selection to understand whether more is better or less is better or what. And that's kind of where I was just in my uncertainty on the rest of that.
And I follow that. And Harry, do you have some feel for how long these applications are going to take to put together?
I don't really, because it's not been, I mean, Business Oregon is kind of building the plane while they're flying it. So it's a little bit unclear what the nomination form is. As I said, they're preparing a scoring rubric. We don't know what that scoring rubric looks like. That may change some of the recommendations about what are our strongest candidates based on their scoring criteria. So we are kind of in this limbo without a lot of clarity about how the process is going to unfold.
Okay. So let's just maybe knock out question 1 about which to prioritize. Is anyone got a different option or thought for number 1 other than Tract 1?
So there was the note specifically about rural. Would Census Tract 1, 2, or 5 be considered rural under the?
None of our tracks are
Okay.
rural.
So would that possibly mean that 8 might be?
No, 8 is not
Oh,
rural
okay.
either.
Oh, thank you.
Go ahead, Keeney.
Great. I was just going to suggest we do 2 recommendations at least, but not 3. Perhaps that might be a bit more. But I like 1,
So,
I was thinking 5.
Yeah, with that said, I mean, look, I think 1's clear. That's where we're gonna go, unless I can hear you have unless you have a different idea.
Just had a question. It also brought up the poverty level designation. So
I'm sorry, the which?
the poverty level designation.
Yes.
So maybe understanding if that could play into this at all would be important.
Well, again, I don't know if that's a criteria in the scoring rubric or not. It is criteria for whether the census tract is eligible, period. So either you have to be at 70% of median family income of the statewide, or you have to be at 20% or more poverty rate and below 125 of median statewide family income. So those were just the criteria for what you could consider as a census tract. I don't know if there'll be scoring criteria or not.
Okay, so 1 is number 1.
1 is 1.
So the question I have is, this is staff recommendation number 2 is 2.01. I had written down 2.03 was Spiegelberg. So which is what's the difference between the 2.01 and 2.03? And I could
Okay,
be, yeah.
2.01 is this odd kind of diamond-shaped thing with the tail on that goes, diagonally on the map. It is the west edge of Census Tract 1. I think there's a fair amount of geographic synergy and infrastructure commonality between these 2 tracts, and that some of our growth, this is also kind of straddling the other side of the railroad tracks. So I think it's a decent pairing of that complements what we're doing in Census Tract 1. Census Tract
03.
3 is all the way south. Basically, it's the residential neighborhoods just to the north of Stewart Avenue. Other than Spiegelberg,
Right.
I don't see a lot of substantial redevelopment opportunity or business creation opportunity in this largely residential area. And we haven't done the overlays for the zoning and all that, but I suspect that most of this is zoned single family and probably not as strong a zoning base.
Right. Okay, so thank you. The idea was the 2.01 adjacent to 1. Sorry, John, did you have a question?
Yeah. Harry, I agree with all 3, and the reason I agree, 1 is obvious. 2.0 essentially fulfills or fills out 1 because it has the western border, And we've been spending a huge amount of time talking about the Bear Creek corridor and Creekside, et cetera. Well, 5 is right on the other side of the creek, so that is perfectly logical. It gives more flexibility to would-be developers. So I think you're dead on, and unless it's overwhelmingly time-consuming, all 3 should be looked at. It doesn't seem hard, and good thinking on your part. Question, is this, you know that our brilliant legislature decoupled from HR 1 a lot of the Oregon tax law, and we don't follow form as to a lot of the tax cuts now because they wanted more of our money. Is one of the things they decoupled opportunity zones such that a person in doing this investment would get hit with Oregon capital gains tax, even though they might not get hit with federal? It would still be better, but I'm just curious, is it decoupled? Is that one of the brilliant things our legislature has done, essentially dissuading opportunity zones in our state to the exclusion of others?
Interesting question. I don't know of what the status is in terms of decoupling and whether opportunity zone under federal law is decoupled from Oregon or not. I think it's a good question, and we can investigate that and find out.
And things that can be built with this are not just residential, correct? It's any type of a capital improvement.
Yeah, I mean, you can build
So
new
for
commercial
example,
property. You can create a business. It doesn't have to be real estate. It can be
So if
business
someone-
or business expansion, employment based.
So hypothetically, if someone pooled $500 million of appreciated property and decided to build Creekside and get $100 million of that taken off in taxes instead of money from
Yeah.
the city,
Yeah, no, it
that
could.
might be awfully handy, might it not?
Yeah,
All righty.
I do want to say one thing that whenever the feds invent a new tax incentive,
Uh-huh.
Investors have already got some tax management strategy. Like in real estate, most everybody uses a 1031 exchange.
Yeah, it's just
And they just
essentially-
keep deferring the capital gains until such future date that either they bite the bullet and pay it, or it goes in their estate and their kids get a step up in basis.
Right.
But to enjoy a tax-free benefit for them, you got to die, which is not a real great prospect. Whereas opportunity zones is something you could actually realize in your own lifetime as a tax-free benefit on capital gains.
taxes and death
So, but
simultaneously,
people
the
have to
dual
s-
inevitabilities.
People have to switch up their tax management strategy, and I've talked to a number of people who have looked at opportunity zone investments and said, you know what, I got my plan. I'm not going to pivot just to do this one thing. It doesn't make sense for me.
Well, I mean, when you first started talking about it, the first thing I thought of was this is a 1031 on steroids, and it's going to be something that can be used for, I don't know, people who cash in stock options because things are going well in Silicon
Sure.
Valley and they
Yeah,
decide
well,
to commute and live in a cheaper city or invest in a cheaper city. Yeah, this isn't hard. I support all 3.
So I think that the logic behind the 3 that were chosen is there. The question is, how much time would it take to do all 3, and whether or not it waters it down, which we don't really have a clear answer there. So I don't know if we can give you 100% direction, but I do think that at least what we're hearing here is the 3 look good. Number 1's the best. And then if you came back, I think, and said, boy, this takes a lot of time, you might get a slightly different answer. But John?
So, Mayor, I was just going to suggest that is council comfortable with giving staff some discretion? We'll do 1 for sure. If it looks like this is going to be overly burdensome, 2.01 is the second choice, and maybe we stop there. Or do you want input on the next 2?
I'm gonna my feel is, it depends on, if we're talking giant lift and you guys come back, I'm sure you'll get an answer to focus on the priorities as given. Nick, and then,
I was just going to say, I think I have a hard time imagining a scoring rubric that's going to make that census tract 1 not our best option, but I do think that depending on the exact specifics of the scoring rubric, 5.01, 2.01, some of the other 2s, those could be potentially better. So I think if this turns into a big lift, my direction to staff would be take a look at the scoring rubric and spend your time on the things that are going to score the best.
Yeah, I think once we get the rubric, we'll have a better sense of how to, the nominations, the narrative is largely going to be the same for each one in terms of the alignment aspects. And all we'll be doing is specifying development opportunities, sites, and where there's potential developer interest. So they don't vary that much in terms of their content other than proposal of specific, where we have already identified opportunities.
I agree with everything that's been said. I did want to add a little context for everyone. So we're going from like 80-something opportunity zones statewide to 50-something.
Right, 86 to 58.
So we're looking at about a third reduction.
Yes,
Okay. And Jackson County only has 3 opportunity zones right now. So
correct.
numerically, we'd be losing 1. And if Ashland's going for an opportunity zone, and if the county is going to be nominating White City again as an opportunity zone, we're competing locally for these things. So I want to make sure we're.
So let me clarify. The eligible tracks in Jackson County, there's 1 in Grants Pass, and they've consulted with us already, and they've already decided that they're not going to nominate. There are 2 in Ashland, and 1 of which is being considered for a nomination. So the only local competition would be 1 tract in Ashland.
Oh, so there wouldn't be like White City wouldn't be. Oh,
No, it's not eligible for redesignation.
okay. That's good news.
Okay, so your second question had to do with, I think, some direction on how much effort to put into
Yeah,
it.
this is more
it
like.
just feels a little premature, but I'm just curious.
It is, but it's a bit of the horizon that there's clearly a lot of expectation that we want opportunity zone uptake to be much more robust than it was in the first round. And communities that organized and really put some resources to help market and promote and get the information out and assist investors in doing these projects really fared well. And so the state is asking, are you going to step up and do a little bit more? Again, we already have a project under our belt. We have the capacity to assist, so I'm not terribly worried about that. That's a reasonable argument for us to make. But it is something that's uppermost in mind is like, who is shovel ready, although I don't know exactly what that means either, and what is the readiness factor? My only concern is that, well, all right, who's already out there lobbying for their census tract because they've got a project already in the pipeline that they want to propose?
And so thinking that through, like you said, Mira's did this before, and we've always, not always, but certainly during your tenure here, there's been an engagement with people trying to find projects, trying to find the fit, trying to do that. And John, I know that Warren's kind of doing that same thing. So it feels like, at least from a marketing standpoint right now, I just don't think we're going to take their foot off the gas from what we've been doing. And hopefully that,
I think
guess, gives some.
we're well equipped and well resourced to promote the program.
Okay.
And planning's doing a small area plan for the south side of downtown and the fruit packing area and all that. So there's ongoing work to identify development opportunities down there, and this can be folded in as part of the information packet that supports that work.
Okay. Does that give you some sense? And I sort of speaking for the whole, but I mean, I think that's the direction, at least that I've picked up from the council.
Yeah, I think we'll certainly do one for Census Tract 1. I like the idea of let's see what the scoring rubric really looks like, and then we can sort of prepare the basic information for 2 and 5, and then bring it back to you in May and say, do you want us to push and do all 3, or shall we just call it quits? And this is our best candidate.
And do you feel like you have the concept of how the council support on,
Yes.
let's call it marketing of properties is there? And then, by the way, if anyone's got a different thought on that, I see you have your.
I just wanted to make 2 remarks. 1, you're wearing the same shirt as me. And 2, there's a representative from Business Oregon that has a quick note, if you will allow it, from a conversation we've had during this.
Do you want to just give a little headline and then?
I think Marta's here.
Yeah, Marta has an answer to something that has been asked.
Okay.
Marta, you want to come down? Marta Teranci is the regional.
In the meantime, has there been any thought about how we maybe don't want to push on marketing opportunity zones if we get one? Yes, Mike.
No, I want to mark them. I think it's a good idea. I think zone 1, tract 1 makes the most sense. 2.01 is an obvious marriage for that one, I think. If we keep pushing forward with Creekside, I do see huge potential benefit to 5.01. But that's a hyper-specific need. I think 2.01 is a little more broad, probably.
Well, and keep in mind, we're talking about a 10-year lifespan of the zone, so we have to think broadly beyond what's currently on our platter.
Good afternoon, Council. My name is Marta Torrence, and I work for Business Oregon. Thank you, Harry, for noting that every state is flying this plane as we're building it. And I have an answer to the question Councilor Quinn brought up, and of course we will confirm it for you in writing and for every community. To begin with, this has always been a federal program, so we're presuming that the benefits would only be applicable to the federal capital gains tax liability. Therefore, the decoupling of the code does not affect this at this time, but we will confirm with the Department of Revenue. It was always only a federal capital gains program. Thank you.
Okay. Well, Harry, I think we're good.
Okay, so we'll bring this back to you most likely on consent if we have it fully baked and tied up with a nice bow. And you always can pull it off and make modifications. And that will probably be at the May 20th meeting.
All right.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, Mr. Vile.
Thank you, Mayor. Next item, Mr. Worth is going to be presenting to you the results of the Transportation Safety Action Plan. Council provided some input on that plan back in November, and we have a draft plan completed. He has a couple of quick questions for you, and we do have approval of this item on the agenda for next week to approve the TSAP, unless tonight you give different direction on that. Dan.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Dan Worth, Public Works Director. I'm here to talk to you about the Transportation Safety Action Plan, which I will refer to from here forward as the TSAP in order to shave several minutes off of the length of my presentation. Why do we want to have a TSAP? To make our streets safer. We want to make our streets safer. It's a matter of policy. Council adopted in 2023 a Vision Zero policy, which is a national movement, but the goal is to adopt a policy to set a goal of zero fatality and city injury or serious injury accidents at some point in the future, and we're targeting 2035. And you can see the note at the bottom of the slide. We do have some issues. We got room for improvement. It's a 5-year period, but you can see the number of fatal and serious injury accidents. We can certainly improve on that, and that's the intent of Vision Zero, and the intent of having a TSAP is to help us along that route. And then I will throw in another more short-term practical reason why we want a TSAP. Cities with a TSAP can apply for a federal grant program, the Safe Streets for All program, that does make some pretty good grant awards in order to implement street improvements that incorporate some of the objectives that we identify in our TSAP. And in particular, we are looking at a project that's in our TSP. It's been scored highly as a safety need for several years. Table Rock Road from Merriman to I-5 to just short of the bridge. 2-lane road, no shoulders, no bike lanes, no sidewalks. We're looking to improve that to a minor arterial standard to match the road to the south and to match the road that's north of the bridge that's maintained by the county. They all meet that standard. And this is a high-density residential area, lots of pedestrian traffic, lots of apartment to school kind of traffic. So it checks off a lot of boxes. It would be very attractive in this Safe Streets for All grant program. And we've got a funding window opening up in the near term. Actually, it's open. The notice of funding opportunity has already been released end of last month. Grant applications are due 26th of May, and we intend when we come to you to ask for a final approval of this plan, to also ask for approval to submit for that grant. So, so we think this is an important immediate benefit of having a plan in place. Some comments about what the TSAP is and what it isn't. It is a data-driven and community-informed plan that gives us a toolbox. It gives us a set of strategies and treatments that we can use to address safety shortcomings and make our streets safer. It also helps identify what those opportunities are, where we need to focus. What it is not mandated. This is a voluntary program. State doesn't mandate it. Federal government has it as a requirement for that grant program, but it's not otherwise mandated. And it's not a list of required projects that are going to tie our hands or the hands of future councils. This is nothing in here that says that we have to do project A, B, or C. It gives us options. It gives us a menu of things that we can do as we go through and execute other projects that we've already identified through our TSP process. Current status, we are hopefully at the end of the process. We came to you last November and you gave us some direction, and we have incorporated that. We believe we've incorporated that. We've gone back and done some additional outreach through boards and commissions, Planning Commission, Transportation Commission, Active Transportation Committee. We think that we are ready to ask if you have any further direction or if there's anything that we've missed and address any concerns. But we're at the end of that process. I just want to highlight the community engagement. I said it was a community informed process. We've been at this for about 1.5 years, and you can see different phases, figuring out what the issues are, how are we going to solve the issues, and then finalizing the plan. And you can see opportunities where we've had community meetings, we've had meetings with boards and commissions, and as I mentioned, we had the meeting with you in November, and we're closing in on the finish. Just to give you a brief overview of what we've done and how this has progressed, we started by looking at data. It's the data-informed plan. What you're looking at is straight out of the TSAP. It's a plot that shows accident history on all our surface streets. Didn't include I-5. We include surface streets that we control. We have authority to do things. And this shows all accidents over a 5-year period. Uses ODOT data. We used ODOT and Medford police data. That was a point that we discussed last fall. But this shows the ODOT data. You get similar results. The red and the orange are the fatal and the serious injury accidents. That's what the focus of this plan is. But you can get an idea of where accidents occur, and probably not a lot of surprises on this. So that's where accidents occur. And let me back up a second. One of the things that comes out of this analysis is what we call a high injury network. That's another map that I'm going to show you in a minute. But focusing on those fatal and severe injury accidents and adding in some additional analysis, we came up with this high injury network, which again helped us focus in on what the areas are that we need to be looking at. Here's the additional stuff that we factored in. We took a look at the accidents, the types of accidents, and we can identify some things that accidents had in common, the serious injury and fatal accidents. Emphasis areas and risk factors. Emphasis areas are factors that are associated with these accidents. Vulnerable users, pedestrians, and people on bicycles are a common theme. Motorcycles are a common theme. Impaired drivers, not a lot we can do with the physical structure of the roadways, but that's something that we can address with some other strategies that were identified through education and enforcement. And then on the right side, risk factors, this is the physical stuff. There are certain physical factors that are associated with the types of accidents that we're concerned with reducing. Speed limits are a big factor. Land use, there are land uses that promote a lot of pedestrian activity adjacent to roads or that put people close to roads. Daytime versus nighttime is a factor, and lighting comes into that. So emphasis areas, risk factors, we can take all those things, marry them up with the analysis that showed where the accidents occur, and we have a combination of the high injury network and the risk factors. And this chart is a little difficult to read, but the high injury network is the stuff that's shown in red, red lines and red dots. The risk factors, segments that have multiple risk factors, are shown in blue. And you can see there's several places, again, no surprises really, but several places where there's red and blue. You've got identified risk factors and you've got an identified serious injury history. And those are, of course, some of the things that we really want to zero in on and look closely at. So when we zero in and look closely, what are we looking at? We're looking at strategies and treatments that we can put in place at each of these individual locations to try to make things better, to try to make the facility safer for the people using it. And just a couple of definitions. Strategies are kinds of the things that we can do to perhaps change driver behavior, enforcement, education. The treatments are more of the physical things. Do we put changes to the configuration of an intersection, timing of an intersection, pedestrian amenities, bicycle amenities. But we took a look at strategies and treatments that we could apply on our street network and developed a toolkit, a list of things that we could do to address the problems. And another composite map. We take those, the high injury network and the risk factors, combine them, and we identified 6 different areas where we wanted to, these are the areas that stood out, and 3 of them are segments, 3 of them are intersections, and in a couple of places you can see Main Street and Ross, Lozier, you got an intersection and street segments, Barnett, same thing, intersection with Riverside, and then the segment along Barnett. You've got areas where we felt we could really gain something by putting some focus on those specific areas and identifying some of those specific treatments and strategies that we might want to consider implementing as we go about improving those segments and intersections in the future. And I'm going to show you a slide that I do not expect you to be able to read from there. But this is what we generated for each of those 6 areas and what's in the plan. And on the left-hand side, the risk factors, the emphasis areas, and the little graph at the bottom shows things particular to that location, to that intersection. In this case, we're looking at Barnett and Riverside, and there's some peculiar things. There's the angle of the intersection leads to higher speeds as people go from Barnett to northbound Riverside. But we went through each of those 6 areas that we identified and identified the specific risks in the area that we wanted to address. And on the right-hand side, treatments and strategies. It's again, it's not saying that if we do a project on Riverside at this location that we are going to do certain things. It's giving us a list of things that we need to consider as we go through the planning and the design for that particular project. So it's taking those things that we think will work to address the kinds of issues that we have and just giving us a list of things that we can consider. You see roundabouts on the long-term treatments. It's not going to say that we're going to go and implement roundabouts everywhere. It is a traffic control measure that has proven to have safety advantages. We're going to consider it. And you can say the same thing for everything on the list, things that we're going to consider as we go through project planning. So implementation, really 3 things, and this graphic is straight from the plan, but the 3 things I want to emphasize, 3 steps that we want to follow if we adopt this. Number 1, it gives us the ability to apply for grants, and we intend to do that along with adoption, apply for the first one, but we are going to be looking for opportunities to provide funding so that we can execute projects in a TSP that also appear in the high injury network and do some of the things that are suggested, or at least evaluate doing some of the things that are suggested in the plan. And we'll also use this document. We've got several things in the TSP already that overlay with some of the areas that rise to the top as we do the safety analysis. And Table Rock Road is one of them. As we do these projects that are identified in the TSP, we're going to use this toolkit to evaluate what we can do to make the project even safer. And then the last piece, education. The strategies, I'm focusing more on infrastructure. That's largely the part of what Public Works is going to do, but Public Works is going to partner with PD, with communications, as we develop some of these other education strategies, enforcement strategies to try to change drivers' behaviors to attack that side of the equation as well. And then the last chapter of the plan is a monitoring and reporting chapter. As we go forward with this, we want to see if it's working. So we want to have relooks in the future, and we want to be tracking things that are meaningful, and the things that are meaningful that we think we need to be tracking, two basic categories: implementation. Are we actually doing projects and implementing things that were identified in this plan? And the other category is metrics, outcomes. Are they working? Are they making us objectively safer, or are they making the street infrastructure objectively safer? And we intend to measure that, and we intend to come back to you with reviews, probably on an annual basis, to see how well we're doing on those metrics. So next steps, it's on the agenda for next week to come back and put this in front of you again for final adoption. If you approve that, the Table Rock grant application will be on the same agenda, and we're going to be asking your permission to go forward with that grant application, and then going forward, obviously, into the future. Every time we do a TSP project, we're going to be taking a look at some of the things that were identified in this plan as to whether they make sense and we implement them. So just as a summary, again, what the TSAP does and what it doesn't do: it gives us a menu of useful tools, it supports our Vision Zero policy, and it opens the door for those Safe Roads for All federal grants. What it does not do, it does not tie our hands, it does not commit us to specific projects or specific treatments, it does not limit our flexibility as we go forward. So with that, I would be happy to entertain any questions.
Mr. Carlinger.
These aren't, it's just some feedback on it. You already touched on one of them. I remember during some of our discussions, I said roundabouts can be a really great tool. I think the roundabout at Springbrook and Cedar Links was, like, that's the perfect option for it. I was a little concerned about how many times I saw the word roundabout related to some pretty major intersections. But you touched on, we're not saying this is a long-term solution. This could be a solution. So I appreciate that discrepancy.
We're not asking you to adopt a roundabout first policy, which other communities are doing. It's a tool. It's out there.
Yeah, sometimes it's awesome. And then I think as we're going for grants, as we learned at Stevens Street recently, sometimes the strings attached to a grant are a little too thick to be worthwhile. So let's get as much money as we can, but be cognizant of sometimes we can't fit a square peg in a round hole, and we might have to find an alternate route, but no pun intended. But let's get as much grant money as we can.
So I feel like I've asked this before, so hopefully you know the answer just like that. But when it comes to identifying the high injury networks, is that like an objective standard based on some sort of percentage, or is that just looking at where the most happen in Medford?
It's looking at our accident history and identifying where the serious injury and fatal accidents occur, and there's no set scale. We're not measuring ourselves against anybody else. They're happening with greater frequency in some locations. We wanted to identify those locations.
But if we were measuring safety against a national or state standard. Was that included in this at all? I mean, is there anything that says, hey, Medford's kind of inherently unsafe and you guys better step on it here?
There's nothing in the analysis that says that Medford is inherently unsafe. And we have some comparisons with other municipalities. We compare well, and with the rest of the state. And accident rates are higher for counties, and we saw that in the numbers, than they are for municipalities, because just the nature of the roads. A lot of longer roads, longer trips, rural trips, and fewer drivers. So the percentages are different. But as far as any kind of objective standard, are we high, low, in the middle? That really doesn't exist. But what we saw in the analysis we did, we're not at the top, we're not at the bottom.
Gotcha. Any other questions?
Mayor?
Yes, sir, sorry.
Just per your question, on page 25 of the plan, there is a graph that shows how we compare to many cities and counties in Oregon based on 1 million population. So we do have some comparable data in there that shows how we do compare to some other jurisdictions.
25?
And as Dan said, we're right in the middle.
There's two numbers.
Sorry. Wrong page number.
Any other questions while I get?
Right
Where are we? Oh, okay. Got it. And was there any thoughts on the kind of the giant, the fairly large spike in fatalities last couple of years in the data there?
I can't answer that one. I don't know, Carl, if you have any insight into that. Carl McNair, our traffic engineer.
Good afternoon, Council. So we did see some different traffic patterns around COVID, in 2020, which was part of the study period for this. What we saw initially were lower traffic volumes, but we saw speeds increase, not just locally, but around the country. They saw similar patterns. We are seeing in more recent years, we've had lower fatalities, but more serious injuries. So we don't know exactly why. There's also, more proliferation of distracted driving, cell phones, some of those issues which are leading to crashes nationwide on this.
And you kind of got that sensation of kind of global data, but do we track distracted driving? In other words, like, I know that you said that's an education component of the strategy, not necessarily a built environment one, but I'm just kind of curious if you had any feel if that's driving locally as well.
Yeah, we saw in the crash data, I used to know the exact percentage. The police actually mark distracted driving on crashes on the crash report for ones where they can prove it. And it was a very high percentage. I don't remember the exact percentage now.
It was 61%.
Oh, thank you. That's Amy Griffiths from Kittleson, our consultant who helped on this. Voice from above. Thank you, Amy.
Hey, Siri.
So 61% were cases where the police could actually verify there was distracted driving. The actual numbers are likely higher than that.
Yeah.
Even.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for staff? Otherwise, it sounds like just throw it on the consent calendar and we go.
We'll see you in a week.
Mr. Vile, item 3 tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the last item is to have a little revisit of Main Street. So in January, council made a decision regarding the alternatives with Main Street and directed staff to proceed with restriping Main Street to what was called option 1. Staff is doing that. Council direction has been given, and it's staff's job now to carry out that direction. And so staff is working to deliver a project late summer, early fall. A month ago, Councilor Stein did raise and ask a question regarding could we have another discussion on this, and there was agreement to go ahead and hold a second or another study session to revisit this one last time. So staff is not making a recommendation on what the appropriate action to do tonight is. We are carrying out council's direction unless we are directed otherwise. So we are asking Mr. Stein to share his thoughts. We do have some alternatives that have been suggested since that decision was made, and Mr. Worth is prepared to show some of those other alternatives that have not been discussed previously. So with that, Mr. Stein.
Thank you. We can do whatever we want. That is not always the case. There are certain land use decisions that are, out of our. I mean, even then, we can still do what we want. Then we can get appealed and have to spend the money to have some greater governmental powers to tell us we're in the wrong. With this, we can do whatever we want. So, I am rarely surprised. In my many years of public service, I have seen lots of things, and so as we've gone down the road, pun. We came up with we took the staff direction, and it was a little bit of split, and we moved forward, and it was very quick that it was not well received. There was other transportation things that had been done in the city previously that did get some pushback, and then it really didn't take long before people either didn't see the worst thing happen, or they just kind of moved on. And so Columbus is one example, and then was it McAndrews up was another. There was a whole bunch of pushback. Then it occurred. The McAndrews one was very interesting because we actually got some emails then that said, oh yeah, I thought this was going to be terrible until I actually saw it, and then it's actually fine. And the citizens that live there are safely able to retrieve mail, which was another aspect of that. This was not this. This was not that. Almost immediately there was pushback, which again, totally understand. The difference here compared to the other two examples is that pushback continued. There were things done from that initial pushback to try to help people navigate with the bollards and different things where you didn't have people driving in the parking lane and wondering why the cars were not moving. That has largely been rectified, I believe. But I think that there needs to be some sort of change made. And so at that point, it becomes the policy decision of what that change is. So we have seen all sorts of different examples of what can be done. You're literally only space limited. The ideas are out there. I think we had, 20 things of examples, and we kind of narrowed it down quite a bit to 4. And then, it looked like, from a council perspective, from a policy perspective, we were really down to 2 or 3. And then it seemed like at a study session we were going to go forward what was referred to as option 3. And then where I come back to, I'm rarely surprised. On that night in January, I was very surprised because it seemed like we were going in this direction based on a study session, and then when the vote came, we went a different direction. And that's okay, because as you well know, final decisions are not made during study sessions. People can figure out what they want to do when they get there. So all of us, we have different people that we talk to, and depending on how big or small is the amount of people you talk to, you might hear pretty narrow opinions, or you might have pretty large opinions, depending on the different groups you talk to. The concept that there's going to be one magic solution and everyone's going to be happy, as I said however many months ago, that's not going to happen. Since the council has made a decision on the 4-4 with the mayor tiebreaker, we have heard lots of input from individuals. They've kind of grouped together in certain ways. of why the old 3-lane would be not the best way to go forward. Some of those people would prefer it to stay the same. Some of those people would prefer that option 3, maybe because they think it's the best, maybe because they think it is at least better than 3 lanes. You know, you talk to enough people, you're going to have enough things out there. So a couple things to get to the point is, with this being a policy decision, and I am thankful to Mr. Card, because I asked him, is if there is no way to even consider something else, then it's a done deal and there's no reason to have a study session, right? There's just, you know, as you guys know, even in your brevity of time, you're not going to win them all, right? There's going to be votes you take and the majority is going to go somewhere else and you move on. This one, I am not a transportation person. However, there are times that you see something where it's like, you know what, I really kind of disagree. So, talking to Mr. Card, he has, as someone that is in transportation and does have a varied interest in these things, not that other people have interest in it, but he has a different background than the rest of us when it comes to this. He has worked with Dan and John and trying to figure out if there's, I don't even know what number option this would be. Do you have an option number for this?
It's option Z. We'll go with that one.
Z, okay. So Dan, if you wouldn't mind.
After him?
Oh, that's
no,
a good.
Option C, yeah.
Oh, wait, how are you going to vote, Mayor? Yeah, option Z, okay.
Yeah.
So let me just jump in here, and I want to say
I got
this.
a comment after that.
Okay. And so, you know, one of the things to give a little bit of color commentary to what Kevin said is never let, in my opinion, never let a good grumbling go to waste. And so, you know, when you make a mistake, one of the things I've always said is making a mistake and then trying to come up with different ideas that's what governance is all about. You cannot know everything about all issues. And I think while I still stand by option 1 versus option 3 in terms of or whatever the hell the numbers were, go back to the way it was versus the one buffered bike lane, I still say going back to the way it was is better than the buffered bike lane. But clearly there were some other people and had some other opinions, and this was an opportunity for us to kind of relook at maybe some things that hit the cutting room floor a little too early. And this particular proposal that is on the screen before you is something that is inspired by something that Mr. Kerlinger was a fan of in the early days. And there are some concerns with this proposal in the sense that, you know, these are narrower lanes than we're comfortable with. There are no buffering on the bike lanes. It's kind of a narrow bike lane. But one of the things that we do have to deal with Main Street is we have a curb-to-curb footprint that's there. And so sometimes squeezing a little bit, especially if you can get more for the community, like a significant increase in parking on Main Street, this proposal puts 40 more parking spaces on Main Street. It gets us a bike lane. It puts more parking in the community. Man, that just seems like a win to me. And I know that it's not exactly everything we want it to be, but to me, this is the kind of proposal that I think if we take another look at this, this gets us somewhere closer to perhaps upsetting everybody, which is usually a good solution. So.
And so I do want to point out, because this is the first time I've heard the idea, but it's the first time I've seen it. And so you do see the estimate is 1.22 million with includes grant payback. And so Mr. Worth can probably say this better than me if I do it incorrectly. But the grant has to be paid back if there's not a basically a good enough buffer around the bike lane. So because you turn the car and the car has to make so much space to do that compared to a parallel parking area, there would not be a big enough buffer on the bike lane to be able to sustain the conditions of the grant. And so this makes it 2 lanes with more parking with the bike lane, but the grant would still have to be paid back. And so here's one option, and then there's the 30-degree one.
Option ZB.
Question on this option, actually, before we go on, would that be okay? Would it be possible to switch the bike lane with the parking lane? So the bike would be, have the sidewalk on the right side, and then you'd have a small buffer of plastic there, and the people could park where the bike lane is now, and then you'd have 2 lanes of traffic. Seems like that would be actually safer.
Can I?
It would create issues with bikes coming in and out of the lane adjacent to the curb as they approached intersections, and if they wanted to
Well, right
make
now you've got
turns.
cars going in and out of the bike lane. I mean, what's the difference?
You'd have a bike, you'd have a parked car with a bike coming here
On
with
the
a vehicle
passenger
going
side.
this way that you can't see because it's behind a car
Oh, you're talking about turning onto the.
if someone's
see.
turning.
Exactly.
Also, one of the main complaints we've heard about the current configuration is that parking is in the middle of the street and not
Yeah.
curbside.
Okay.
And so this has a slight alteration here. So this is 30 degrees, so the angle that you would park on the left-hand side. So cost would be the same, and so instead of, was it 40? It was 40. Yeah, so instead of 40, it becomes 17, and this is where you have, because you change the angle, it makes it a little bit easy to get in and out of parking lanes. So I guess like visibility would probably be easier. Yeah. Please.
We did 3 different variations of the card option C. You saw the first one. This one changes the angle from 45 to 30. The thought was that we could buy more space in this case, we made wider car lanes, but this is the 3rd variation on that. We could use the 30-degree angle, keep the narrower car lanes, and get buffering for the bikes. And in this case, we put the buffering between the bikes and the parked cars so that car doors opening don't pose a hazard to cyclists. But what Mr. Stein was alluding to a minute ago, we talked with ODOT, with the program manager for the particular grant that we used, and their feeling is that we need to have buffering on both sides, the parked car side and the car driving side, both sides of the bike lane, in order to achieve the safety improvements for cyclists that the grant was predicated on.
I mean, maybe, John, maybe this is a question for you, but and maybe I'm wrong about where the money came from, but I swear we have safer routes to school roads that we have bike lanes on that were funded through this program that are unbuffered.
Most of the other safe routes to school projects that we're doing aren't, well, I don't think any other ones are removing travel lanes and adding bike lanes. Most of the improvements that we're paying for through the Safe Routes to School program now are sidewalk improvements, creating pedestrian routes. This one was not the normal Safe Routes to School program. We get an allocation to do unspecified Safe Routes to School projects. This one was a specific grant that we applied for to get this particular segment completed.
So I'll just add to that. I would agree with Mr. Worth. The huge majority, in fact, I can't think of a project off the top of my head that we added bike lanes. Almost everything with Safe Routes has been sidewalks. But then there's the Safe Routes to School program is a very competitive program where you put applications in. This particular one was what was called through the Rapid Response Program, and it's a very different program than the typical Safe Routes to School program. So it was a special grant through the Rapid Response Program that uses Safe Routes to School money.
So I think that is what I have. I was just asking Mr. Worth like that amount because I think it was roughly $1 million for having it to go back to the old style. So I was wondering why now this is a 1.2, and he informed me that there needs to be some sort of modifications to that left hand. Yeah. Okay, so modifications to the left hand area where they would be the angled parking.
Mr. Keating, did you have something you wanted to say?
I was curious about the 1.0 to 1.2 switch as well. But am I right in assuming that if we stick with what we've already decided on, we're sticking with a $1 million number?
Roughly.
Roughly, okay.
That's all I have.
Okay.
I do have one more, actually. Yeah, after you go.
Okay, what about the back and diagonal parking option? Because I want that.
So the easy way to do that is we just do the 45-degree option, but we reverse the angle of the cars and you just back in. It isn't a safety improvement. It might be a little bit more controversial to people because it's a little less typical, but then you're pulling forward out into traffic as opposed to backing into traffic.
I can't improve on that. It would give you the same impact on parking, net parking spots. It would be safer on the backing into traffic side, and in particular, or driving forward into traffic versus backing into traffic. And there was one more thing that I was going to address. I can't remember what it was.
I mean, my theory is you have to back into, technically,
Yeah.
you need to back
Oh.
into parallel parking anyway.
Yeah,
So-
you do. But the other point that Mr. Card raised was acceptance. We don't have it anywhere else in the city. And I'm aware of other municipalities that have implemented it, and it got as much acceptance as separated bike lanes or even roundabouts. And many cities ended up reversing the reverse back-in parking.
All right. Garrett, did you have something? You were thinking about something.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that the back-end option is at the 30 degrees or the
45. Well, I mean, you could technically do it with anything, any angle, depending on the density you want to achieve.
Is there a difference in safety?
You could do it with any angle, but the 45 is I think, the option where it would, the 45 is the option where it's more difficult to back out into traffic. I think it would be more beneficial on a 45.
And that gives us more parking
No,
spaces
the
on-
parking would be the same as the nose-in parking.
Oh, but I
It's
mean,
gonna be,
that-
it gives
for-
us more parking, but,
Okay, yeah.
but the increase is the same.
Okay. And then on the option that's in front of us, this 30-degree, I see the drive lanes are both 11 feet in width on both. But the minimum could be 10?
Minimum could be 10, and if you put 10, you could provide some buffering, but not as much as what the state is saying we would need to do.
Well, how much does the state say we need?
2 feet on either side.
Okay, thank you.
And I would add that the state is especially sensitive right now because one of the things that the legislature did to help ODOT close their gap, lacking the increase in gas tax that they were looking for, was they swept money, unallocated money from this grant program. So they're under a higher level of scrutiny to make sure it's being spent properly.
Well, okay, a few things. And if we're relitigating the whole thing, if we go backwards and being surprised, and I was with Kevin at that point as well. And, you know, really at the end of the day, you get a split vote that what it really means is council can't, here's a shocker, like when it's tied, council can't decide what they want to, we just really don't know what we want to do with this at the end of the day. I think I can probably pick out a couple that are 100% convinced that option 3 and a couple that are 100% convinced option 1. I was one of the few people who were like, I don't know, why don't you just narrow up that cycle track and give that a shot and see if people feel better when there's a little bit more breathing room.
I'm sorry, Mayor. Dan did lay that out for you.
Oh, all right, well, I've got a speech going first. I am personally, like I said, when there's 3 lanes, I could get down to City Hall. When there's the standard cycle track, I could get down to City Hall. So I'm not as married to something more than another. I will tell you that it frustrates me to give back the grant money for an option that was, I mean, resoundingly unattractive to the entire community. And the fact that the state, now we've got some, that's a decent answer actually to hear, which is they're using that money for something else. anything they can sweep back into that account and maybe plow roads or do something with the money, that's what they're looking to do. The idea that whether it's a 1 foot or 1 foot on both sides for a buffer, that's not even being considered. If you put a bike lane in, it's not being considered. If you took that money and put it towards a different bike ped project, that's not being considered. So we're getting kind of, we have minimal options is the way that kind of the state is working with us on that, if the money is the critical issue. I think that because I think we're still going to be split on the idea of, I think we all look at this and go, hey, that's an interesting idea. We can increase parking. We've heard from people that say parking's more challenging on Main Street. That's good. And then we turn around and spend even more money on that. And then we put it in as backup diagonal, and then we're back here again in 9 months. But it's a tough spot to be in, I guess, is where I'm at. One of the things that happens is you go back to the 3 lanes, you know that worked and nobody complained about it. And that's a fact. But I just don't know if that actually, what is that? That doesn't really solve anything. It doesn't add parking. That costs a lot of money. But at the same time, we know it works and that the citizens would be, most of the citizens would be comfortable with it. I think at this point, it's just, I've given us all maybe more to think about rather than decide on, but it's tricky, and I think it'd be, if the council can find a solution that works for them. Unfortunately, I kind of feel like the state's not being very, very responsive to the issue that we're dealing with, trying to make something that's acceptable in the community. I'll offer my services. I'll call them if you want. I think the answer is they don't want. Any rate, that's my spiel for right now. This is, I guess, an option ZD. Oh, Dan, if you wanted to talk about that. Oh, Mike, did you want something? Say something?
This simply takes the buffered, the separated bike track, narrows it down, allows us to move the parking on the left side a little bit closer to the sidewalk, and gives us wider lanes. We would be able to keep the grant, and other than narrowing that gap and putting parked cars on the left side closer to the sidewalk, closer to the storefronts, and reclaiming some additional space for the car lanes, the elements are the same as what we have out there now. We could also couple this with some additional improvements that were suggested a year ago when we considered options to modify what's out there, to do things like enhance safety, enhance sight lines, remove a parking spot at the intersection so you get a better sight line of oncoming cars, double stop lines, so you stop at a bike track, then you stop at the roadway. Things like that could also be added as enhancements to alleviate some of the concerns that we've heard about the current configuration. But it's essentially a dressed up version of the current configuration.
And I want just one comment, which is and I know this has got whatever built-in features to it, but we're going to have to put some precast bumpers there on that edge so everyone feels like they're parking against a curb there. Let's see, we had Mike. Did you want to go first?
I don't mind
Nick.
what order. Our last meeting I came underprepared because I thought there'd been discussion and I knew which direction we were going. And to your point, Kevin, sometimes things don't go our way, and I'm actually pretty okay with that, except for when I feel the reasoning behind the decision was as flawed as it was when this decision came. We all know that this concept has not worked. That's like no secret, nobody likes it. But that doesn't mean we just say, hey, well, 3 lanes used to work, let's do it again. Some fun examples of things we used to be able to do is ride a motorcycle with no helmet, and you didn't have to wear a seatbelt, and you could have a beer while you were driving as long as you weren't drunk. Those were all things we used to be able to do, and those are all still stupid ideas today, which means going backwards is not inherently the right answer in most of those circumstances. I think one of the key issues that came up is a lot
of conversation went around that survey, and I don't want to say we need to completely undermine the survey. I don't want to say we can never do surveys anymore, but I don't think it was perfect. I can say fairly empirically and confidently, and this is based on the dozens, if not hundreds of emails we have received in direct response to this number of businesses who have signed on, and the personal conversations I have had by walking into businesses downtown. The vast majority of stakeholders downtown who are most impacted by this decision do not want to go back to 3 lanes. And we have empirical data supporting that. Anecdotally, I would say most of the people who said they wanted 3 lanes hate that there's only 1 lane when you come out from the bridge. They hate that parking is what they call in the middle of the street. They did not realize there was any option to resolve those issues other than 3 lanes. So they actually didn't want 3 lanes. They just wanted not this. And they saw a dualistic decision in front of them. So they said, yes, go back to 3 lanes. That's anecdotal, it's not empirical. Some other fun surveys. KJ, I promised you a good story. Surveys are a tool for collecting feedback. It's not a ballot. It's not a perfectly democratic way of decision making. Greenpeace held a vote. They were tracking and trying to protect some whales. And so they ran a survey to help people name them so they felt connected. And so for a few years there, Greenpeace was following Mr. Splashy Pants to make sure that he didn't get hunted. And then my favorite was the British Royal Navy had a research ship. And the majority, by a landslide, voted to name the ship Bodie McBoatface.
I concur with that completely.
I'll let you in on a secret. The boat was not named Bodie McBoatface. Simply because a survey says this doesn't automatically mean it's the right decision.
People were pissed that it wasn't named Bodie McBoatface.
I voted for it. They can be helpful. Doesn't mean that we are just bounds to them. This is meant to be one piece of several that we can put together for what makes the most sense for the largest swath of the community. And this is not a case of a few petulant citizens or counselors who just are sad that they didn't get what they wanted. I feel we have strong evidence to support that the original decision was flawed with good intentions, but due to misunderstandings. And I think we're not doing our jobs if we don't revisit other options, because the way it was, or what someone's familiar with, is not a very compelling reason to do things.
That's actually a wonderful segue. Dan, can I get you to go to option 2A for me, please? So this is, so if you want to call 3 lanes Bodie McBoatface, option, oh, we got a couple more options. We're tearing through these options. I got the attorney helping me. There we go. This is our USS Enterprise right here, Mike. All right, so just a couple things. Like the short version, I don't think I need to, we heard a lot about safety. I tell you, one of the number one things that, if you know anything about the way people drive, and this research has been going on for a long time, people drive at the speed that they feel is safe and appropriate for conditions. They don't care what a speed sign says, they care what it feels like. One of the advantages to the way we did our, the dual bike lane is by squeezing the cars together. You really only had a visual corridor 2 lanes wide to drive in. That slows people down. You push the cars back out and you have a giant buffered bike lane, you're not going to be full of bikes. So that means when you're driving down Main Street, you're still going to be in that visual corridor of 3 lanes wide. To me, having a buffered bike lane is not a substantial increase in safety. It's not going to keep speeds down because you still have that visual corridor. This option right here, this gets us to that 2 lane wide, safer, visible corridor that's going to slow people down. It enhances parking. This is a thing that, if there's any issue that I've heard about more, I can't think of an issue I've heard about more than parking downtown, the need for more parking. Now, I've heard from a lot of different parking studies that we've looked at and all these other things that, well, there's tons of parking on downtown. It's just a couple blocks away, or you go here or there. You can go downtown and take a look at it. But when we say parking, I think it's important to contextualize that as comfortable parking. That means people are parking in a place that they feel safe, that's convenient for them to their destination. So increasing the density of parking on Main Street is a good way for us to actually create comfortable parking options that will fundamentally shift the needle for the perception of parking availability in downtown and addressing a lot of our vendors' issues. You know, we talk a lot about we don't want people driving through Main Street. Great. We do need people driving to Main Street. We are a car-based community. Most people who come to Medford are not walking downtown or biking downtown, they are driving downtown. Creating infrastructure that enables them to drive downtown and park downtown is important for commerce that we want to create downtown. On the grant money, you know, one of the things that I want to remind council of is we did not go into the Main Street restriping project with an expectation of having a huge grant. That was an extra that we got. We were prepared to pay the full freight to make that thing happen. And so it was great that our staff went out and they were able to find this grant, and I really appreciate their hard work with this. I just think we're so caught up on this grant that we're forgetting that this project moved forward without it. We wanted the cycle track before the grant was even on the table. One of the things that I agree with Mike about the bridge. We got to create more space, create more crossings. This 2-lane design does that. And it gives us a lot more flexibility how we cross the bridge in terms of what we do with the parking around the bridge, because we've got so much more parking that's going to be because of this angle parking that we have further up Main Street. And I will lastly agree with Mike's point about the renovation. You don't go back to square one. But you know, if your interior designer, if you say, hey, look, this kitchen that you made me it's not what I'm looking for. And they say, well, you're right. Here's this retro diner theme with black and white tile floor and red pleather or fake leather seats. And then your other option is to go back to the way it was. I think most people would also pick to go back to the way it was. So we have to make sure we're contextualizing that. All right, maybe you want a diner in your house. Okay. All right, so anyway, with all that being said, here's kind of where I land on this. And this is what I would ask of council. I want to see option 2A move forward. If we don't move, if there's a consensus from council that staff can bring us option 2A, we can vote on it at the next meeting. Hallelujah, I will make that motion to change the way that we are restriping Main Street. If there isn't a consensus on council about option 2A, this is the last hat that I'm going to throw into the ring in terms of what we want to accomplish. And so if somebody else wants to carry water for a different option, great, fine by me. If it's a good option, sell me on it. This is the option I want to sell you on. I think this is a good option. I think when we factor in all of the feedback and interest we've heard, addressing long-standing problems with Main Street and long-standing community concerns, I think option 2A is the winner. I hope council will support that. I hope council is interested in having staff bring that to us for a formal vote. Thank you.
All right.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah,
you got a comment down?
two of them. Great. That's what I'm looking for.
Me? All right, I've heard what you guys have all said. I've appreciated it, but I don't necessarily agree that the methods we used to try to poll the community were flawed. It was brought up on the radio stations in town, you know, ad infinitum. We had the surveys, 2 surveys. We also had some evenings where people would come and speak and really consider it and think about it. That too voted in favor of going back to the original configuration. This is not option 2A, that is. Again, maybe it looks good on screen, but again, you've got what could possibly be a big safety issue. You've got cars backing into a lane of traffic going forward. You've also got an unbuffered bike lane, and it's going to cost us another 20% more than going back to square one. We've got an aging community, and they do not like change. They're not going to come down to Main Street in the rain at night. And then, you know, you've got people are going to be, I don't know, I see kind of a nightmare with this 2A option. I guess that's all I've got to say. The people, in my mind, the people have spoken. I've heard all the comments from the people that came down here. I do appreciate that they did come down, but I think there's a huge amount of people that did not come down and speak. And those are the ones that had originally spoken in the survey, the people that I have spoken to months ago. So I'm pretty convinced that we made the right decision, whether it was Bodie McBoatface or not.
Mayor, can I clarify something real quick? I'm not saying that the survey was flawed. I did not say that. I said that the survey is meant to be a tool in the decision making, not a ballot. So when we have roughly 2% of the population say they want something, there's still 98% left to consider. And the people who own and operate buildings and businesses downtown are most impacted and should have a weighted say in that. And I have business owners downtown, building owners complaining that rents haven't raised downtown in since the 80s, in 30 years or more. The people who don't want to go downtown weren't going downtown when it was 3 lanes. So that's bunk. They say, oh, I hate the downtown lane, so it's not going to there. Well, then why weren't you downtown supporting businesses before this?
There was nobody clamoring to have these lanes switched in the first place. That was a decision made
I
when we
understand
got
that,
the
but I'm
grant.
saying they're not going downtown because it's not 3 lanes anymore. The people saying they won't go downtown because of this weren't there before the change.
Okay. Thank you for both of your perspectives. There was someone else that wanted to speak? Garrett.
I do have a lot of heartburn about the cost of these options. I certainly don't like giving money back to the state. That being said, 40 additional parking spaces, that seems like a good value to me. One of the top things that I hear people complaining about downtown is the lack of parking on Main Street. I've had so many people stop me to tell me about that, especially businesses that are right off Main Street. So that would be a big bonus to me. The question I have for Nick or Mr. Stein would be, with this angled parking, like, are there other communities that you've seen this in, and can you give me maybe an example?
They were going.
When these ideas kind of pop up, you start looking for things a little bit more. In Salem, the capital of our state literally has, on the left-hand side, as you're driving directly by it, has angled parking, while people are driving probably more than 20 miles an hour by the Capitol. So it was very interesting. And guess what was on the other side of the street? It was parallel parking. So literally, as you enter the Capitol, you will see this a similar design. I do not know if it was 45 degrees or 30 degrees. I did not have the wherewithal to determine that as I was there.
Come on, Kevin, bring your
There
protector
was a
next time.
concern. I mean, I would say, is there other places like this in the city, other than like the mall or large box stores where you have angled parking? I don't know of another place like that, and so that would be the primary concern, because there's obviously a difference between backing out into a road at the mall compared to backing out into a road on Main Street. So will there be pushback? Yes. Maybe, probably, because it's different, right? I think that was the main concern with where we are today. If the council, actually, I'll go back to roundabouts, right? When City of Medford gets their first roundabout, it's like, oh my goodness, what is this? We've never had this before. This is different. I don't necessarily like it. But when you create more roundabouts, then it becomes more commonplace and people can kind of adjust. If it was the goal of the council to say, you know what, we're going to put these protected bike lanes all over the place, and they were kind of built out in succession, there would be not unanimous in any way, shape, or form, but it would probably be more likely of some sort of cultural acceptance of this is the way it is. So with that, that is the thing. Is this going to be the only place in this city that we even have this be some sort of design standard that we look at to see if it can be in a new location, or if we're retrofitting something currently to be like this? If that is, then it should be on the docket. But the fact that we don't have something specifically like this does lead me a little bit to have the concern of, oh, it's a little bit different. what's that going to look like from the community? Last little thing real quick. We do have some good folks, and they give their ideas before us about what they think Main Street should look like. And I did kind of reach out to people that we have not seen and did not sign the paperwork about, it should look a certain way. I was just curious, and I didn't identify myself as whatever. I was just curious. And what I got, again, just like Mr. Curlinger said, small sample size, not the entire community, was the 3 lanes, just not that, right? And so some people don't care one way or the other about the bike lane because, you can look at whatever data. It's not a super well-traveled. There is more. I mean, I think the data shows that there's more now than there was before there was a protected bike lane, but still, is it pretty low? Yes. It's just not that kind of community at this time. Maybe it will be decades from now, but it's not like that now. But the reason that I keep coming back to this and I care at all is because the 3 just seems to be, while there's people that will highly support it, what we heard from when the individual comments came, it was not like, oh, I really need 3 lanes because it's hard to get through downtown. That was not a general conception that we heard. It was generally, I don't like parking in the middle of the road, and things of that nature. Or I don't like when I'm turning onto Main Street, turning left, and then having to get past the bike lane and the parked cars, and my visual is a bit messed up. Those seem to be the primary concerns that we had from changing from 3 to our current configuration. So things that get around that is I'm supportive of. This is not going to have universal appeal, but I'm far more willing to go for this than I am to back down from, changing it back to the 1970s version.
Downtown Bend actually is almost entirely angle-in parking on Downtown Bend. I'm rapidly zooming around Google Maps trying to find, because I know there's at least one coastal city that's a small tourist city that has a bunch of angled-in parking. I just cannot for the life of me remember which one. And I remember distinctly getting off of I-5 at some small random community, and its downtown they were actually in the process of converting it. It was a 2-way, but it was designed with 2 lanes in each direction, and they were in the process of converting it into angle-in parking. So that would be a 1-way in each direction with angle-in parking as opposed to the parallel on the side. So this is not, and there are at least a couple streets that I know of in Portland that do something similar. So I don't think this is a hugely divergent kind of thing in the sense of this is some wild, crazy thing where we're going to be the only city in Oregon and how stupid is it what we're doing. It is unique to Medford, but it is also not unique in the sense of no one has ever seen this before. You're not going to come across angle-in parking and go, why are the lines on an angle? I don't know what to do. Because every major parking lot has angle-in parking or some variation of that. That's a very comfortable thing. People navigate it regularly in their car. It being on a public road may be unique, but it's not like it's a unique thing in that sense. So I think while we may receive some pushback, I think there will be a lot less pushback than some of the other novel things that we've done. And to get those 40 additional parking spaces downtown, to me, that is what sells the value of this option.
Okay.
I just briefly wanted, Mr. Stein had asked about the angle of the parking space in Salem. I just checked there at 45 degrees.
Okay. So, been a lot of discussion, a lot of thoughts. I think we can't forget one of the issues that we ran up against is if you look at the survey and you say, oh well, it didn't cover enough people, it didn't get this, it wasn't scientific enough, whatever that may be, there is maybe something that could have come out of that, which is just give us back something we know that works. And that's what is, I think we're going to have to deal with regardless of what option we end up choosing with. We kind got out ahead of the public quite a bit, and you go back to the making sure we're gaining their trust back. I certainly, of course, I'll say it as I did before, the idea of the additional parking on Main Street is certainly at least a goal that is achieved with this option that makes it very interesting. But I don't know if this is kind of really a good, I'm kind of leaving this as your time to talk to one another and hash this out. But it kind of feels like we've heard enough, and maybe it's time to reflect or not reflect, depending on where your stance is at. So I'm kind of leaving it up to you guys. If we're good, we can move on, as in go home.
Well, what is, I guess, so the question then is, Mayor, what are you thinking about, how does this get resolved? Because to me, let's think about it and go home means now we got to put this on another agenda to do another study session to do something else about this. And so, and maybe that is the will of council. There's enough people who are saying, I want to look at these options some more. I want to think about this. Fine. To me, the way this works right now is 3 lanes is the elected or is the decided vision of Main Street by council. That's what's moving forward. Until council proactively changes that, which requires something being brought to council, which requires one of those councilors who voted for the measure to bring up basically a repeal replace of that measure. And so I'm willing to do that, but I don't want to waste a bunch of council's time and staff time if there isn't a thumbs up from at least 4 councilors here that want to see this thing moving forward to a vote.
No, okay, so I appreciate what you're saying there, and then what it really is that, number one, I don't think we get that resolved tonight. But there is the, what does it look like? If you go back and make sure you got 5 votes for your option, then we're doing a non-noticed meeting. So that doesn't really work very well.
Well, to me, and Mr. Mitten may be able to clarify this, I think what I'm hoping to see is council direction to staff to bring an issue before council in the form of a thing. I mean, the agenda item? Yeah, I mean, so, Mr. Mitten, clarify my legalese.
I would love to speak to the procedure on this. So our code says that we follow Robert's rules, but they're not binding. The Robert's rules correct way of handling this would be a motion for reconsideration. We can't have a motion in a study session. And so at the next meeting, one of the individuals who voted yes on the prior motion would have to bring the motion for reconsideration. I believe anyone can second that. It doesn't have to be 2 of the people who voted yes. And that could it could be one of 2 things. It could be reconsider and just shelve the prior decision and open it for debate, or it can be reconsider and direct a certain thing. And there's all sorts of tactical decision making in terms of the vote and vote counting on which of the 2, but those are the 2 procedural ways to do it. Now, what I can also say is that our code says Robert rules are guiding but not binding. If we can't really make a final decision, we can't repeal that. If council really prefers to do something tonight, it would have to be a straw poll directing staff, but functioning as a motion for reconsideration. It would be procedurally sloppy. No one would actually go to jail, but I don't think it's the...
Well, Winnie isn't here, so we can send Winnie to Winnie jail. So.
But it's so...
Yeah.
The cleaner way is to have a motion next week and have a proper motion for reconsideration next week. If y'all want to give thumbs from the dais and tell us to bring something back, I mean, I'm not going to order anyone arrested.
Let me ask you this, and I've got you, John. You'll go next. The motion to reconsider can be done at the end of the meeting, just as a councilor motion. Yeah, it doesn't have to be
it does not. Item. Yeah, the cleanest way would be next week in the business meeting at council business at the end of the meeting, someone make a motion for reconsideration. And that motion for reconsideration would direct whether we bring back a specific option or a plate of options. And then if that motion passes, the business meeting after the next one, you vote on, you either approve what's being brought back or you vote on the panel of what's being brought back. And there's a full agenda item commentary for that would be the first meeting in May.
Wait a minute. Let me ask you this. A motion to reconsider then, help me out on the Roberts rules, that just means you're going to recast ballots on the original motion, are you not?
So I think the motion can be phrased as either hit a reset button on your prior action or hit a reset button on the prior action and select this instead. I think the cleaner way, since we have several different things the council likes, is have a motion for reconsideration that just says undo the last vote. And then we bring in AIC with these options for a council meeting, and someone makes a motion as to whether it be 2A, 2B, 2C, 3. I saw a 4 in there.
I'm pretty sure I'm out of town at that meeting.
So the cleaner way with the motion for reconsideration is to just have it pull back the prior decision, and then it's like no decision is on the table. We can bring forward materials, and that way staff is not acting against council's prior vote and bringing forward items for a vote. Okay. That would be my recommendation procedurally.
John Quinn's been waiting patiently, John, sorry.
I like the way Eric suggested.
Microphone, please.
Most importantly, I can count to 8, and I can count to 4. And assuming one of the ones who said they wanted option 3 doesn't change their vote, it'll be 5-3, I suspect, if Nick is changing his view. So if he likes A, put it on the ballot to do A, we'll vote how we vote, and it is what it is. Let's just get it done.
While I love working with my good friend, Mr. Mitten, I do have to respectfully express a concern. Staff is rapidly running out of time if you want this done this summer. And so bringing this back for reconsideration and then bringing it back in a next meeting, we're pushing this out and we're putting Dan's staff in a very, very tough place. If we're going to reconsider, I would suggest that you'd reconsider with a motion on what you would like to do.
And so just parliamentary hat for a second. Strictly speaking, if we're going to be very nuanced enough to follow Robert's rules to fact even doing a motion to reconsider should not include additional evidence into the record. It should be made because there's an error of fact or law in the interpretation of the existing record. And so, like, I'm kind of in this boat of, like, why half-ass Robert's rules? Either just throw them out the window, or we're going to do this by every parliamentary procedure, and John will have a decision to by October. So I can't make a motion right now because we're not in a meeting, but what I'm saying is, like, my intention will be that I'm just telling you guys transparently then, since I can't seem to get the mayor to ask for a thumb straw poll, I'm going to bring back a...
Hold up. Whoever wants to do 2A with the information you got tonight, put your hand up. 1, 2, okay, 3, there you go, Nick.
5. All right, perfect. I will make a motion for 2A at the next meeting. Thank you.
Okay, we're adjourned.
Sorry, I just want to make one quick thing.
Wait,
what time is it? Is it 9 o'clock yet? Oh, I need less than 3 minutes. I went up because I was thinking about the cost. So if the city said, you know what, I want 40 parking spaces, and we just tried to do that, you guys actually, you might probably know better than me, but it's going to cost somewhere between $10,000 and $20,000 per parking space. And so if you're looking at 40 spots, you're looking at somewhere between $400,000 to $800,000 if we just went out our own to get parking spots. So while that is a big number, if you look about the additive in terms of what it would cost just to do that anyway, plus it's going to be even harder to try to find downtown areas to try to do it. You'd probably clear off something as well. So that's just a kind of little nugget of information when it comes to looking at that cost. Like,
just got one more thing. I'm
All right,
sorry.
last word.
All right. Most of the people that spoke in the last, God knows how many meetings we had, have been saying that like, oh, we shouldn't be spending the extra $500,000. And they have this feeling that going to the option 3A, I think it was, would save 500,000. And we need to disabuse them of that, right? And what they're going to see now is it's going to be $1 million or $1.2 million. And you can say all you want about the 40 parking spots, but you know, they need to know, the people need to know it's going to be a lot more expensive.
Okay. Council officers.
Okay, I'm just gonna go through council officers really quick. First item, we had a concern brought forth about public comment period potentially not being sufficient. We had a brief discussion about it and decided to leave it the way that it is. Number 2, Zoom link. It takes Winnie time to put together a Zoom link when each one of us decides that we're gonna be somewhere else. So they're just gonna put forth a standing Zoom link that's gonna be available for every meeting. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't give notice if you think you're gonna be gone. And it is not to be abused, so you can just stay at home in your pajamas instead of coming to council. Number 3, there's some legislative option coming. The state and the AARP have been working on it, and we want I'm getting this all backwards. The city would like to work with them on legislation to regulate cryptocurrency ATMs because of elder abuse. That's why the AARP is involved, because elder abuse is a big thing, and bad actors use these cryptocurrency ATMs to do bad things, including defraud elders. Did you want to add something?
Do we want a thumbs up, a straw poll at all from council?
Yeah, I don't need a formal motion, but a thumbs up for staff to work with the AARP and the state on a potential future bill would be very helpful, since it is ultimately a policy decision.
Would you like some more information?
I'm just unsure. What are we doing? Were
Sure.
we just signing on to a letter? Or are we actually doing something?
This would actually be, I would be on a legislative work group writing the draft bill to submit to the legislature. So there's some staff time involved. This is an issue I've been working with financial crimes detectives for a couple of years on in terms of individual cases. We're specifically talking not about websites that a lot of people use crypto, use like Coinbase. Yeah.
Sorry, to be clear, is there other government agencies, like municipal folks involved, LOC types? Like what is the work group, I guess?
Right now, an individual from the state, I forget the name of their agency, and an individual from AARP are building a work group by reaching out to various municipalities. They reached out to our detectives. The detectives forwarded it to me. I'd like to take part, but only if council feels this is something aligning with your policy goals.
Yeah, like I said, if it's part of if it's building a coalition,
oh yes,
that's great. If it's we are just trying to get a bill done, I'm less great. So thank you.
John?
I've had people get scammed by ATM with Bitcoin, and it happens, and usually the perp is way out of the country, and that money's gone. With that said, and of course, I prosecute all the scams. I'm against them, obviously. I don't support scams, but I question whether certainly state legislation against Bitcoin ATMs would be preempted either by federal law or the Dormant Commerce Clause.
The majority of states regulate them far more than Oregon does. So, for example, California's got $1,000 per person per day limit on Bitcoin ATMs. I worked on a case where an individual put $50,000 of cash of his retirement funds into a machine in 15 minutes.
I know it can be done. California also does a lot of interesting things.
But theirs has already been pressure tested through the courts.
Has it? By the state courts?
I would have to take a look at it. I can send you a link to that case.
Yeah.
That gives me what I need. Thank you.
Okay, and lastly, we did reach a union agreement with fire department. Voting will be done by April 30th to council at the first meeting in May. That's it. Fire negotiations. Done.
Mr. Vile, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
Nothing further, Your Honor.
All right. Well, productive meeting. We are adjourned.